to start, I've got to ask, how does someone from Yale who goes into journalism kind of transition into acting?
Well, if you could see New Haven, Connecticut in the winter, you'd realize why I acted every winter, just to kind of beat the monotony, and the everything is gray and white with snow, gray with soot. The only color in New Haven during the winter is yellow, and that's from dogs pissing in snowbanks. So you got to do something to beat those student blues. And so I acted every that was the main time I would act is just in the winter to kind of pass the time. But I always acted. I was my parents used to be part of a little. I come from outside of Chicago, a town called Barrington, Illinois, and they were part of the Barrington Play Reading Group. So when I was a little kid, my parents and some other parents, 6 or 7 parents, would put on plays in their houses, and they would have a dinner party, and then they would put on a play in their living room, and they would hold the script in their hand, but they would wear costumes and make a set and everything. It was very cool. The Barrington Play Reading Group, and I was often enlisted as what if they needed a kid, like in The Lottery or Sunrise at Campobello or 1,000 Clowns, for which I won like a tiny Oscar for playing Nick in 1,000 Clowns. So, that too was always kind of in my blood. But I'm from the Midwest, man. Good old Midwestern stock where you don't really think of acting or writing, for that matter, as a career. You think of it as an avocation, something fun to do. But if you're going to make money, you're going to go to work, and by golly, swing that pickaxe or whatever they were expecting of me. So the fact that I even got was able to make a career out of journalism was a real big break for the Mosleys.
For the journalism stuff, that obviously you have to delve into research and factual evidence when you're writing your articles. Was there ever a creative like narrative writer or like creative writing person in school, or did it just was it one of those things where you just got out of school and you don't know what the hell you're going to do with yourself, and I'll just do journalism? Or was it
when I first got into it, I was an English major, and yes, when I was in 4th grade, I won first prize for a fiction called Diney the Dinosaur, about a little triceratops that was very much like me, that was always crying wolf and pissing off the tribe, and finally they send Diney into exile, and Diney sees that there's a Tyrannosaurus coming to eat the other triceratopses. And so Diney comes back, and they don't believe him. So Diney goes out, this poor little triceratops, and fights the Tyrannosaurus and kills the Tyrannosaurus. He gets bitten, but he kills the Tyrannosaurus, and the tribe, lauds him, and he becomes the chief of the tribe. That was my fantasy. 4th grade.
That's great.
I did so well with that the next year I followed up with Orny the Ornitholestes, which is another dinosaur. So I mean, I knew a good thing when I saw it. So, but I mean, I've always written creatively, but that wasn't really where I was able to make a living at the time when I got out of college. Actually, what I did was I went right from Connecticut to Boston, and when I was there, I was a copywriter for an ad agency, and that felt like looking into the gaping maw of hell. So I got out of that. I just thought, oh my God, is this why I've gone and become an English major? Is that to sell, Purity Supreme supermarkets? And I had fun doing it. I mean, I think it's a wonderful profession if you're into it, but I just figured there's got to be something else. I don't know. That was my little yearning.
Would you ever lean into the greeting card business, do you think, at this point in your life?
I feel like with all of this, I'm good at picking greeting cards for other people. Yeah. So I'm certainly a big fan of greeting cards, funny, weird, inappropriate greeting cards, So I don't know. I mean, if push came to shove, I think there are probably worse fates than writing greeting cards.
I just think there's something beautiful about it. Personally, that's what I'm trying to achieve in my life, is just the ability, just one. I want to be published in one, maybe two of my own greeting cards.
Wow. Well, you can do that now, right? You can, get on TikTok and, become a greeting card millionaire.
Yeah.
I can make dancing elf videos.
I need is Omni magazine still around?
Zombie magazine?
Omni.
Omni. No, it's long gone. Omni was one of the first magazines that actually went online, and I don't think they really had worked out an advertising scheme because they didn't seem to last very long.
Yeah.
But Omni was, boy, that was my bread and butter. I would say that was the spine of my freelance writing career in New York City.
Yeah.
Because you know what I did? Because I loved science. I mean, when I was in college, I took a couple of courses. One was black holes and quasi-stellar phenomena for the non-scientist, and quantum mechanics for the non-scientists. I mean, I was interested in it, but I didn't want to have to go to graduate school for 10 years to figure out what they were talking about. Yeah. And so I always loved science, and I got my opportunity to interview people for Omni, and I had a great editor there who loved me and just kept giving me assignments, and I would bring in ideas, and she would say, yes, we'll give you $5,000 to fly to Costa Rica to talk to somebody about bugs. And I was totally into it, man. That was great.
Well, real quick, while we have this short little break here. Hey, welcome everyone. We are now live to Facebook. Thank you for joining us on this special Wednesday evening edition of Making Waves with our guest, Bill Moseley. Not our usual musical fare, but however, that's a contradiction because he does have some music in his professional career. So we'll talk about that. But everyone, welcome. Make sure to pose your questions to us on the thread, and we'll get to a few of those. But right now, we're going to continue our conversation with Mr. Moseley here. And if you guys don't know him, and I can't imagine if you haven't seen one of his movies or something he's been in, he is kind of the anti-hero with some of his characters, including Chop Top from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And most of you probably know him as Otis Driftwood from the Rob Zombie trilogy. And I think most popular was probably The Devil's Rejects for a lot of folks. And Three from Hell, obviously, is the same thing. But he's got an incredible new film, and I hope you guys have seen the trailer, called Prisoners of the Ghostland with Nick Cage. And if you guys haven't seen this thing, I'll let Bill explain it further, but from my eye, it's like Samurai meets the Wild West, almost a spaghetti Western Wild West. It's completely gonzo, but considering you're in it and Mr. Cage is in it, it's kind of fully expected of the two of you. And it's kind of a character that's a little bit different from what we expect from you lately. And could you just talk to people about this film? Because it looks incredible.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's great to be here. And hello, Facebook. The Prisoners of the Ghostland. I think it's coming out maybe middle of September. I think September 17th was what I saw in the trailer. The trailer dropped today. It looks fantastic. I'm the guy in the white suit and the big beard and the white cowboy hat and the red gloves. And I play the governor in Prisoners of the Ghostland. I guess I'm the bad guy. Geez, what a shock. But getting the job was great. I'm friends with writer producer Reza Sixto Safai, Safai, who's also on Facebook, and Reza had come to see. I invited him to come to see Three from Hell. Rob Zombie is the last of the trilogy that Rob, or let's say so far, I don't know, we seem to survive at the end of it. But anyway, so Reza came to see that, saw me as playing Otis with a big beard and whatever I was doing, and said, I've got this great part. We're going to go shoot this movie. It's starring Nick Cage, and it's shooting in Japan. And I was like, whoa, definitely count me in, man. If it were, with Nick Cage, I mean, even if they were shooting in, a phone booth in Duluth, I'd be more than happy to walk there myself backwards and just to, have a chance to work with him. A big fan of his. I just love, especially the more recent stuff like Mandy, Color Out of Space. I see Pig. I haven't seen the movie yet, but it looks fantastic. So I was all for it, and I got to Japan. It was very coincidental because my wife and I had just taken a cruise up the Mekong River from Ho Chi Minh City, former Saigon, Vietnam, up to we were on the water all the way up to Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and so we were in the vicinity, and they had some different start dates for prisoners of the Ghost Land, and it turns out I was able to have my cruise up the river with my wife, and then get on a plane and fly to Tokyo and take the bullet train. I'm a big train guy, down to Maibara, which is a little town on the banks of Lake Biwa. And for horror fans, that's where, I guess it was the green gargantua came out of Lake Biwa. So I was very excited. I'm a big kaiju fan too. So, I was very excited to be at Lake Biwa. And we shot this wonderful movie. My character is kind of capitalism, everything that's wrong with America, capital, I don't know, something, but I'm some kind of archetype, I like to think. And Nick Cage plays a prisoner. My granddaughter, quote unquote, has escaped into something called, Ghostland, which is a place. This is a kind of a futuristic dystopia, and Ghostland is where all of the bad people and the radiated people, I mean, all kinds of crazy, kind of spirit people are located. And she has escaped into the Ghostland, and I get Nick Cage out to get him out of jail to go off and fetch her and bring her back in 5 days. He wears this incredible suit, this bodysuit, looks like leathers from an Italian motorcycle racer, except the only difference is that it has little bomb clusters at very strategic parts of the body, including over his testicles. And there's also a little meter on his wrist that, if he is about to harm or hit my granddaughter, his arm will blow off. If he is about to if he has some sexual intentions, well, something else will blow off. So he's got, there's a time, there's certainly a bunch of peril, and it's a great movie. We actually got selected for Sundance back in February, and that was quite an honor. Unfortunately, of course, it was Zoom dance as opposed to actually going to Utah, but it was a very great honor, and I'm really excited. This is going to be a real fun ride for fans of just about everything.
I got to ask you, with your energy and his energy together, what was that like on set? I mean, it seems almost uncontainable.
He was such a great guy to work with. I was worried that he was gonna, say Bill who, and is that the way you're gonna do it? In other words, I had worries that he's such a he's an Oscar winner, man. So I figured that he I was a little timid, and he just turned out to be the greatest guy. Really a lot of fun. We swapped a couple of stories over it was freezing there, so we had like couple of little folding chairs and a flame heater that we'd kind of warm our hands while we waited for another setup. And he was a great guy. Really liked him a lot. So as it turned out, he's into it, I was into it, and that's really all you can ask. If you have the misfortune of working with somebody who's more concerned about, which's my better side, and, all that kind of stuff, all those concerns, that can, kind of color the experience. But with Nick, he just pounded it out, really good, really a lot of fun, knew his stuff. Man, he was awesome. I would certainly love to work with him 100 more times.
Yeah. One of the characters, before I let Chad come in, I want to ask you about was Otis Driftwood, which is something you're really known for. People very much treat you as a hero, not an anti-hero at certain points. But when we think of mass murderers, we think of like kind of like rednecky kind of things. And there was obviously the element, but there's also a massive intelligence to him. He's more of a thinking man's murderer kind of thing. It always seemed to me like you were like you always had some sort of like machine going in your head. It was always you weren't just gonna talk. You were gonna basically give sermons and everything else. So this is a highly intelligent criminal. Was that something that Rob left you to do, or you just kind of said, hey, you know what, I think I'm gonna go this way, or was that something that Rob had intended for the character to be like highly intellectual?
I think that's all Rob. I mean, you know, when he first approached me to play Otis, what I thought, and I was mistaken, was that what Rob wanted was kind of a chop top redo, you know, like so kind of his own version of chop top. And I remember kind of coming at Otis originally, you know, for House of a Thousand Corpses, kind of coming from that direction. And Rob gently but firmly like pried my hands off Chop Top, because Chop Top was my character, my known character, you know, and like Chop Top, I'm Chop Top, you know, and thank God he did, you know, because I mean, you know, there's Chop Top, you know, and in all of us, I suppose, but you know, with Otis, it was a totally different body center. I mean, I think of Chop Top as up in the shoulders, like, you know, with a coat hanger and hey, lick my plate, you know, all up here. With Otis, it was right down in the crotch, man. It was like 2 thumbs in the belt buckle and like, fuck you, you know, it's like bigger than life, kind of so like a Western hero in part, an artist, crazy, and with no remorse, shame, or hesitation about anything, which I thought was really, you know, wow, how refreshing is that? Yeah. Where it's like I you know, cite let's say Devil's Rejects when you know, when Lou Temple is saying, you know, I'm taking Banjo and Sullivan out to the kill site, and I say, well, you know, that's the end of the line. And Lou goes, wait a minute, well, but you said, but Mister, you know, we did what you said, you know, and expecting me to like say, oh yeah, you're right, you can go free. And instead I go, you know, I didn't say that. And anyway, you know, I'm just going straight ahead, no remorse, no shame, no colors of that, just straight ahead, man. I just think that's the best.
Agreed. And you nailed it.
I am the devil. I'm here to do the devil's work. I mean, wow, you know, and Rob, you know, those are all Rob Zombie lines. So pretty cool. Just all you got to do is just, you know your lines, hit your marks, and you know what comes through is you know Rob and Bill. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff, and you know, it's one of those things where it just that character just, you know, comes out.
Yeah.
And people are a little worried, like, you know, what happens when you go home at the end of the day, you know, and I have 2 daughters and a, you know, wife and stuff like that, a dog, cats, you know, and so what happens when Otis goes home from a hard day at the office? But, you know, I mean, I've learned that, you know, when they say cut, you know, they really mean it. And I'm not a method actor in the sense that I don't have to stay Otis, you know, 24/7. So that's good for my family.
Hey, before we get to Chad, we do have a question I'd like to get to, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Karen, she wants to know, in high school, what would your peers say that you were most likely to be or do, and were they correct?
Well, I went to a prep school in Connecticut called Hotchkiss, and you know, in the yearbook, my senior year, I was voted for 2 things. One was gets caught with the most, and the other one is writes most, gets least, because I was lonely and I guess I was writing a lot of letters to girls at girls' schools or whatever. So gets caught with the most, you know, and I don't know if that answers the question, but you know, I was already into like kind of horrors. At the prep school, I was the president of the Saturday evening music committee, just because in our new auditorium there was a cool turntable, and I would put on like MC5 and stuff, which kind of shocked everybody back then.
I'm from Detroit.
And, yeah, and I was also vice president of the medical committee, medical club. It was a club, and that was because we were able to show stuff like you know, like Philadelphia Emergency Ward and, you know, horrible movies of people with coming in with knives in their heads and stuff like that.
Bill's path was set at a much early age.
That's right. It's true.
So
I hope, Karen, I hope that answers her question.
Yeah, Karen, I think she's satisfied with that answer. Thank you.
I was gonna make a note, like I've been going through your entire filmography and your television appearances and everything before we got started, and I don't think I really realized just how many scary films, horror films, these parts that you've played from essentially the onslaught of your start of your career here. Was it something you planned on when you were thinking about being an actor, to go into the horror genre, or is it just kind of like this is where your mind just sort of like pushed things at the time and then you stayed?
Well, I didn't really have a plan to go into any aspect of movie making. What I ended up doing was, I was still a horror fan, so I got freaked out by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think I saw it in '75 or '6, and it freaked me out so much that I ended up, seeing it a bunch of times to try to make it familiar, and that didn't seem to work. It just made it worse. And finally, I made a short film called The Texas Chainsaw Manicure, which is about 5 minutes. Woman goes into the beauty parlor, gets her hair done, sitting under the dryer, wants a manicure, and out comes Leatherface with the chainsaw and starts sawing her fingers, and she screams and passes out. And when they, slap her too, she goes, oh. She's got a fabulous manicure. And she goes out to her husband in the truck, played by me in a cameo, with a wine mark, looking like the hitchhiker from the original Chainsaw. And she goes, look, honey, I got the best manicure ever. And I go, hey, that's great, honey. We should celebrate with some head cheese. And I bought a bunch of, a hunk of head cheese. And anyway, a friend of mine showed that to Toby Hooper. And based on my literally 20-second cameo as the hitchhiker, I got the job of Chop Top. I was not a showbiz guy. I wasn't on a showbiz trajectory. My wife, who is, was on Broadway, and, she wanted to, that's all she wanted to be when she was a kid and everything. So that's like the more normal path. Mine was like, winning the lottery.
What's the iconic eccentric actor in Dennis Hopper? I mean, that must have been, at that early point in your career, running into him, that acting across from him must have been A, learning, and then B, also intimidating as hell.
Not really. We were so tired. I mean, literally, we were working like 20-hour days, me and Billy Johnson, Leatherface, and Jim Sedow, the cook. And we were just, they were just working our butts off. And the only time I remember seeing Dennis Hopper, we were all staying at the same motor lodge outside of Austin. And we came in for like, breakfast one more time, and we were just beat. And there was Dennis Hopper in his bathrobe, sipping a cup of coffee. And he was just putting his golf clubs into the trunk of his rented Lincoln Continental. And he was about to go off and play golf with Willie Nelson, because Willie, owned that golf club in Austin. And so that was kind of my only experience of Dennis Hopper until, of course, the finale, when he jumps in and we have our big brouhaha in the chainsaw dining room. So I wasn't really that intimidated, just because I was literally exhausted the whole time. I mean, they just worked our butts off.
It's interesting to think about that time period. Just putting myself in what you just said, I can't believe that you were at that stage then, where like you were so tired that the moment that this moment that happened, it's just kind of like, whatever. I just want to get through this next scene. That's an interesting thing. I think about, as a musician, I think about that a lot, like being in the studio or on the road or whatever on stage, and somebody said, "Was it cool to meet this person?" And you're like, "Yeah, it was great. It was cool." I didn't really think about it because I was literally dripping in sweat and just walked off stage or whatever, and it was cool that they were there,
Yeah.
Interesting moments for sure. Speaking of music, I don't know how many people know this out there in ShipRocked land, but you've been creating tunes currently. You have a record that you're working on that's going to come out soon, and you have records that came out previous to this. Could you tell us a little bit about something in the music space, like how you got started Was it guitar, piano? What really kicked you off there?
My mom made me take piano lessons as a kid, and I never really liked it. And what I used to do is we used to have to go to Sunday school, and I would sit there in the front of the car, and I would, be beating on the dashboard of the car. And so she would say NND, which meant no nervous drumming. And I went over to a Halloween party at a friend's house, and my friend Christopher English, and his dad was the editor of Downbeat magazine, which is an old jazz magazine. And Christopher, this is maybe 6th or 7th grade, had bongos in his room. And I started hitting the bongos, and I found my instrument. My music, we always sang in the car. We were a musical family. My older brother, Bruce, plays bass. My younger brother, R.I.P. Dan, was a piano player. And so we formed a band called the Moseley Brothers Band. And had a great time. That was like, through all the family calamities, the Moseley brothers, that music was strong and really was a great bond. And years later, I moved to Los Angeles and met a guy named Buckethead. And Buckethead was a big Chop Top fan from Chainsaw 2, and wanted me to come down to his, like a studio. He had like an apartment with some equipment, and go off on some of the guitar riffs he'd done. So I was happy to do it. I brought my bongos, and we kind of riffed and had a great time. And out of that, he invited me to come to New York and play on an album called Giant Robot. And so I showed up and did a couple songs. One was called Onions Unleashed. I insisted they spell it ONLEASHED instead of U. On Onions Unleashed. I don't know. Anyway, note that's a small footnote. But anyway, we did that. I Come in Peace. And that started us. And then I was starting to do horror conventions. And I wanted to do more than just sign and sell 8x10. So I called up Buckethead and said, let's make some music, so that I can, sell cassettes back then. And so he was down with that. So we went to his rehearsal studio and started jamming and came up with some tunes. And one day we were, doing some videotaping at his mom's house in Oxnard, California, wherever it was. And we were, and his mom had like a vegetable garden, and I was like goofing around in the corn, and I grabbed an ear of corn to kind of make it like I was talking to a microphone. I was going, "Hey, call the cars, call the cops!" And then I looked down, and there was a bunch of bugs on the corn cob, and I was, corn bugs. And Buckethead, recognized that as the name of our band. So that's how the Corn Bugs were born.
8 years or something, right? That you guys were.
Yeah.
You guys were.
And we never did a second take. Everything, and that's not an excuse. That's I don't know if it's, my dad used to say, "You bragging or complaining," but we just cranked them out, man. We just sometimes I would bring some lyrics. Other times I would just make them up on the spot, but we just cranked them out and ended up with quite a lot of songs. Some good, some it's all Corn Bugs.
Yeah, it's all Corn Bugs.
Oh,
the musical projects you worked on was the 4-song EP, Songs of Death and Despair, or Darkness and Despair, or Death and Despair with Phil Anselmo.
Yeah, either way, it's good. Darkness and Despair. I mean, if you want to get literal.
Now, how did that come to be? Are you guys friends because of his interest in horror films and all that you kind of got together that way? What was the genesis of that one?
I was a fan of Phil's. I mean, certainly a fan of Pantera. And I was asked to interview him for something called Artist Direct. It was a website, and they were doing like actors interviewing musicians and interviewing each other. And so I said, sure, absolutely. So I came down to interview Phil, and he was going to interview me. And he ended up knowing a lot more about music, certainly, than I did, and also a lot more about horror movies. So it was kind of like just listening to Phil. I mean, it was like he knew everything. I was shocked. And in fact, just as a side note, I went to his house one time several years ago, and he played me a horror movie I'd never heard of called Deafula, Deafula, that is actually, made by and about deaf people with Dracula, like a deaf Dracula. So, I mean, if you're pulling out Defula, you know your shit. So, but I finally, I kept saying, yeah, we ought to, jam sometime. All right. So, and it's kind of like, I realize it's like asking Paul McCartney to, play bass in your garage band. But, and one time I just, I would correspond with Phil. He likes to write on email and everything. So we would correspond. And one time I just said, hey, man, let's do something. And he said, okay, I got 4 days. If you can get down here, I'm in, north of Lake Pontchartrain and Louisiana. And, and I went, you're on. And I had some air miles, man. I jumped on a plane down to New Orleans and rented a car and found Phil in the woods. And so we had 4 days, and I had brought some lyrics again, poems and stuff. And he went through the lyrics. Day one, we kind of, said hi and all that kind of stuff. And then, we went into the studio. I think day 3 was actually the day I was supposed to do all the vocals. And I had gotten a little food poisoning the night before from some funky gumbo. And so I was a little weak. The day of the vocals, but I was, still doing okay. And, we were laying stuff down. He was, really liked what I was doing. And then I suddenly had this, urge in my stomach, and I ran out and puked in the bushes. And I remember coming back, I had a beard, and I coming back, just wiping my mouth and thinking, that's fucking rock and roll, man. So I got back, and we finished Bill and Phil, and some couple of really good songs. I think there's 6 altogether, so 6 songs. So and I just saw Phil a couple of weeks ago in Indianapolis, and he seems to want to do another one. So that sounds good to me.
Yeah, he is awesome. A prolific artist, bar none. So for sure. And Chad, can you talk about the Ice Nine Kills?
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. You mentioned interviewing people, so the question I had is, I don't know if you know this or not, but I actually hired you to be in that live stream that my friend Miles directed for the band Ice Nine Kills.
Thanks.
And yeah, no problem. During the pandemic, nonetheless. So I wanted to ask, how did it feel? I mean, you've been working probably through this in some way, shape, or form. You just, making music and obviously making movies. But how did it feel to be like, I guess at the height of this, doing something so at the time, especially so outside of the box for the genre of music, not to even say the entirety of how we consume music in the live stream space. Have you done anything since like that?
No, I just worked for Ice Nine Kills last week, actually, again. So I have to say yes. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was a lot of fun. The whole COVID thing was a weird deal. I should say, a weird deal. But that was actually a safe set. I think that's obviously the bottom line. I've been vaccinated a couple of times already back in Jan and Feb. So I'm cool. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was it was certainly a lot of fun. Thanks again for hiring me.
No problem. More or less, like, we were super excited that you were in, because we had our goals set high with Bill Moseley, and we're like, well, I don't know what he'll say, so let's reach out. And you're like, let's do it. So the idea of how it all came together, and then I don't know if you watched it at all. If you got to see the
sure, of course, man.
It was really an incredible thing, and they're like a ShipRocked family band. They played our cruise before, so it kind of ties the whole room together, Yeah.
I thought you were talking about ShipRocked. Is it Arizona or New Mexico? Yeah, right.
Oh yeah,
right. That's ShipRocked. Yes, all right.
I think it's New Mexico, actually.
Yeah, it's New Mexico, because my wife's cousin and his wife actually worked on the reservation there as doctors for 10 years. So good old ShipRocked.
ShipRocked.
Yeah, no, I love Ice Nine Kills. I think it's great. I just worked last weekend with Spencer, and really had a great time working on the new Chucky project, Assault and Batteries. So I love the guy. I love, I mean, I like doing this stuff. If I you know, sometimes, you know, reputation can be a little cumbersome, like, oh my God, you know, would he do it? It's like, yeah, I would do it because I like to work and I like doing this stuff. And, you know, it sure beats sitting around, you know, staring out the window. I just moved into a house. You know, this is my first house. And I was in my same apartment in Los Angeles for 35 years.
Wow.
And my wife and I bought this house during the pandemic. So it's been, you know, it's been very cool to, you know, be, you know, in a house. And yeah, I like to work. I like to work. I like to garden. You know, I mean, now that I'm a, you know,
Bill, don't give it all away.
yeah, right.
Whereabouts were you in Los Angeles for 35 years? The same apartment?
3rd and Cochrane.
Okay.
3rd and Cochrane is about, it's not even a mile from the Grove.
Yeah. Okay.
From you know, Farmers Market. Go in the other direction. When I moved to Los Angeles back in 1986, the one thing that I knew about LA was I knew because I would, you know, as a kid, I was into dinosaurs. So I knew about the La Brea tar pits. And so when I moved to Los Angeles, that was the one thing I told my then pregnant girlfriend. I said, look, I don't know where we're going to live, but it's got to be within like walking distance of the La Brea tar pits. So that's, you know, that's where we've, you know, we lived there for, you know, I lived there for like, you know, many, many years. And finally, you know, finally bought this house. So it's very, very cool.
Can I ask you, were you paying the same price in rent as when you first started renting?
Do you mean there's like the mortgage here?
Yeah, did you get grandfathered in?
When you first moved to LA, lived in an apartment for 35 years, were you paying the same price at the 35th year you did the first year?
No. I think the price doubled, but you know, when I moved in there in 1986, the rent was, I think, $875. And now it's about just a little under $1,600, which still is pretty great. It's 2-bedroom and, you know, a garage space in the back and, you know, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, I'd take that $1,600 all day long. I was in downtown Los Angeles, and it was like
right now it's insane. Well, everything is insane because I don't know what happened. Somebody stepped on the price accelerator. Everything's more expensive.
It's crazy.
Well, listen, Bill, we've had you for over 30 minutes, and we can't thank you enough. It's been a lot of fun, and obviously, I hope very educational for some of our viewers who aren't familiar with your work, but I'm sure they will be. And hopefully, guys out there, if you haven't seen him yet, a good intro to Bill's work is obviously the Rob Zombie films. That's going to be House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, and Three from Hell. Check those out if you really want to get a little deep on him. Check out Repo, the Genetic.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Thank you.
And then also, you can see him. And I just know this little thing about him because I did watch an interview with you before. Your first film you ever saw was The Blob, the horror film.
Yeah.
And then
my grandmother took me to it.
He was in the remake of The Blob, so that's called Full Circle. But right now, the most important thing is go check out his new film, The Prisoners of the Ghostland, featuring Mr. Moseley and Nick Cage. If you want to have a gonzo watching party, grab all your friends for that one because it looks crazy. And that comes out here in, I guess, a couple of weeks of September.
Yeah, middle of September. And if they want to get in touch with me on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, it's at the little @ Chop Top Moseley, Moseley.
There you go. Go right to the source. Bill, thank you. And we really do appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and on ShipRocked and the Facebook Live stream. Also, guys, remember real quick, I'll go to it. We still have a few cabins left for the cruise, so go to shiprocked.com to
right on. And don't rock the boat, but definitely buy a ticket.
Yeah, you don't want to miss some of our God and I Prevail and Steel Panther and all your favorites. So we look forward to that. Thank you, Bill.
Wait a minute, I Hate God is on the trip.
No, Lamb of God.
Oh, Lamb of God. Yeah. Well, I was, that was, yeah.
Hey, let's have Jimmy Bauer on the cruise,
Yes, that's another, the Lamb of God. I mean, I was there, in the Graves, starring Lamb of God, lead singer.
Oh, Randy.
Yeah, Randy. Randy was that was his horror film debut, The Graves.
The Graves, that's right. That's right.
Good old Randy, man. Say hi to him for me.
Absolutely. Bill, thank you. Best of success with this new film, and we'll always be looking out for your work. Appreciate
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Chad. And thanks, Jennifer, too, even though you're not visible. And thank you, everybody. And maybe I'll see some of you at Monster Mania this weekend in good old Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
There you
Oh,
go. Home of the Red Devils.
yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye, Bill.
Bye.
Thank you.
EXIT.